Welcome History 141 class to the office hours. This is your professor, as hopefully you all know by this point, John Fia. The producer of the office hours, Megan Piet, is here. We're going to film a couple episodes today. So far we have spent a lecture and a seminar discussing sort of questions of why study history, why do you have to take this course. We did episode 3, I think, focused on that. Now we got into some material this week. We actually had a lecture, first sort of content lecture, on Wednesday of last week, actually. And that was on Jamestown, and we introduced the Jamestown colony. What are some of the takeaways that I want you to remember, some of the key points in that lecture? Let's remember, again, that Jamestown, we tried to understand Jamestown as what we called a mercantile colony. Make sure, go back into your notes, make sure you have a pretty good grasp on what mercantilism is. And really how mercantilism shapes the whole founding and economic motivations of the settlement of the Jamestown colony. Remember the chart or the statistics we put on the board. Jamestown, because of this mercantilistic drive that the founders have to find something they could trade for gold or some kind of a crop, the death rate is going to be very, very high. There's really a lack of permanency in the Jamestown colony. They're growing things that they can't eat, and thus large numbers of people, if you remember those statistics, are dying of starvation. So the failure in Jamestown is not a sort of crop failure, it's the failure to grow crops, because they're more interested in growing things like silks and dates and all kinds of other exotic products that they might be able to sell on the market. Now, Friday, we continued with the discussion of Jamestown and then sort of the larger Virginia colony when we talked about the role of tobacco. Eventually, the colonies do find a crop. But it's important to remember that in those early years, here's a sort of historical thinking tip for you. Remember, in those early years, it's not clear that the Jamestown colony is going to survive. In fact, it's very possible it's going to go the direction that most of the other failed English colonial attempts, if you will, sort of went. It's not going to work out. We know in hindsight, of course, that Jamestown does succeed and expands into the colony of Virginia. But you have to realize that the people living in those first couple decades, and especially the people in London who were watching this experiment in Jamestown, really had very little hope that this place was going to make it. So it's important, again, a little historical thinking tip there. We know what's going to come, but try to put yourself in the minds of the people there. People are dying like crazy in Jamestown. It's a death trap. People are really going there to die, as I suggested in the lecture. So keep that in mind. Now, Friday, we suggested that there is this kind of change. Some stability does take place. It takes a while, but there is some stability, and that comes with tobacco. So again, think about the importance of tobacco. This one crop, how this crop shapes the culture of Jamestown, how it shapes questions of labor. You should really understand how Jamestown moves from an indentured servant society to a slave society, and what are the implications for both labor and for race in the colony. We talked about Bacon's rebellion in that regard. Think about the way tobacco shapes everyday life, community, or lack thereof in Jamestown. So I think it's very important here in these first 2 lectures to think about Jamestown, a mercantile colony. Tobacco becomes the mercantile crop, and then all the implications of tobacco that we discussed in class. So hopefully that'll provide you some good points of emphasis to think about again as you try to process the lectures on Jamestown last week, or Wednesday and Friday of last week. So I will see you in class. Thanks for watching.